Hi, I'm Haley and I'm a doctor of chiropractic here at WellSet.
And I'm Ashley, I'm a doctor of physical therapy here at WellSet. Today we're going to go over some tips for your desk setup at home, some stretches, and some strengthening exercises to help keep you out of pain. Okay, so when you're sitting at a desk, there's some different things that you want to pay attention to. So I'm going to go over some of like the typical setup, and then we're going to show you how this desk, what works for Haley here and what doesn't work for her, so you can learn how to kind of problem solve with your specific setup at home. If you're in a chair that has armrests, when you bend your elbows, again, you want to avoid the extremes. You don't want to be straight, you don't want to be really curled, you want to be like the mid-range. What you can have a little bit of variation again with this, as long as shoulders aren't riding up towards ears. So Haley, if she had armrests here, her arms would be about this position, so that if my hand is the armrest, she can gently rest her elbow on the armrest, and of course you want them even on both sides. And then the ideal setup for that would be that her fingers are reaching her keyboard right there. So she doesn't have to, again, have any of the wrist, like going really far forward or pulling really far back. She can just gently rest her wrist then down on the table. You can also get a lot of ergonomic mouses. So if you're somebody who uses a mouse a lot at work and you're starting to get pain in your wrist and hand, the stretches that we're providing are really good, but know that there's also options for different mouses that you can buy as well. So if Haley scoots forward, what you're going to notice in this setup, because again, this desk is set up for her to be standing, so what you're going to notice when she brings her hands up here is this has lifted her shoulders just slightly. It's not terrible, but it's lifted them just slightly. So if this chair could come up about another inch, that would be ideal. If you find that you can't really figure out how, you can always like sit on a pillow if your chair doesn't move up or down. The other thing to keep in mind too is that when you're sitting in your chair at your desk, you want your feet flat on the floor. So if we were able to lift this higher, Haley might not be able to have as firm of a placement of her feet on the floor. And then you can place a book under there or a small stool, whatever is at the best height. They even have a bunch of fancy footstools that you can go look at if you're not finding something that works for you in your home. And then from here, again, if we had the ability to take her monitor and lift it just slightly, so ideally she'd be looking just straight ahead. But again, even in this position, she's not really compromising her neck too much. If she was looking down like this, or again, if it was too high and she was up here, that's something that you would want to change. But so ideally you're kind of looking straight ahead. A really good tip for like eye fatigue when looking at the computer is every 20 minutes, you're going to look at something 20 feet away for 20 seconds just to get a different focus for your eyes and then come back to what you're doing. So again, the goal of working from home to avoid the strain is to change your position a lot. If you have a keyboard that's not attached, or if you have one of the wireless ones, you could place the computer up on some books, and you can also do this standing as well. So you can place your computer up on some books or another small stool or something if you want to lift that and then get a separate keyboard to keep down. The other cool thing you can do at home if you're sitting at a desk is vary the chair you're sitting on. So she's sitting on a stool. You might have an office chair that has a back to it, or you can use a therapy ball or an exercise ball. And obviously this is too low for Haley, but you could adjust like where you're at. So sometimes people will have a desk that's perfect to have an exercise ball. But again, just vary your position. Go ahead and come back up into standing really quick. So one of the things that we didn't mention when talking about standing is if you don't have any type of standing desk at home, you can use your kitchen counter or some other surface that's higher at home, or a kitchen table. If you're at a kitchen table, or depending on the height of the counter, that would be a really good time to stack the computer up on books and maybe use a keyboard that's down below. But again, depending on your situation at home, just keep in mind that you want to really make sure that you're maintaining the position of the back. Your elbows are going to be bent about the 90-degree range, but a little bit less or a little bit more depending on your comfort level. Your wrists, you don't want the extremes, and then you want to have your feet placed firmly into the ground. A lot of us like to cross our legs, which puts a lot of strain on the pelvis and then is going to increase the chance for low back pain, neck pain, headaches, all of that, and then tight muscles as well. So those are our tips, but of course you can always reach out if you are concerned about your specific setup or you're having a hard time brainstorming and coming up with ideas to make it more comfortable.
The first stretch that I'm going to show you is a neck stretch. that is great to do after you've been sitting at your computer all day. So the first step is to take your hand behind your back and grab your wrist with your opposite hand. Then what you're going to do is you're going to lightly pull that arm towards the opposite side, bringing your ear to your shoulder like this. You can hold this stretch for about 20 to 30 seconds on each side. This next stretch that I'm going to show you is a rotator cuff stretch. A lot of the times when we see shoulder injuries, they can come from sitting at your computer desk for long periods of time. So what you do is you're taking the back of your hand and placing it on your side. Then with your opposite hand, you're going to reach over, grab your elbow, and then you're pulling your elbow forward. This stretch you can hold for about 10 to 20 seconds on each side. These next two stretches are going to be for your wrists. These are important to do after you've been on your computer typing all day. So for the first stretch, you're going to place the back of your hand on the ground. Once you get into this position, you're going to curl your fingers up until you feel a stretch in this part of the forearm. You can hold this stretch for about 20 to 30 seconds. The next wrist stretch is going to be for this part of your forearm, and what you're going to do is you're going to place the palm of your hands on the ground, leaning back into the stretch until you feel like you're in a good and comfortable position, and you're going to also hold this one for 20 to 30 seconds. This next stretch is going to be for your hip flexors. This is an important stretch to do after you've been sitting all day, and it can contribute to low back pain because your hip flexor actually attaches to the front of your lumbar spine. The starting position for this stretch is in this lunge position. You want to make sure that your knee is stacked over your ankle and that your back hip is stacked over your knee. Then what you're going to do is you're going to slightly lean forward. To increase the stretch, you can lift your hand up above, leaning towards your bent knee like this. And you can hold this stretch for about 30 seconds to a minute on each side. This next stretch targets your front chest muscles, which is very important to stretch whenever you're working on a computer all day, because leaning forward on your computer or on your phone tends to shorten these muscles. So to perform this stretch, all you need is a wall or a doorway. So what you're going to do is you're going to place your arm on the doorway, and you're going to keep your elbow and your shoulder at a 90-degree angle. Then on the side that you are stretching, you're stepping through with that leg until you feel a stretch in this front pec muscle. And you can hold this stretch for about 30 seconds to a minute and make sure that you are performing the stretch on each side. This next stretch is targeting your piriformis muscle. This muscle can often contribute to sciatic pain, and it's a good muscle to stretch after you've been sitting for long periods of time. So to start the stretch, you're going to bring your foot up and try to keep your knee at this 90-degree angle. Then what you're going to do is this leg is extended behind you, and you can lean forward into this stretch to increase the stretch, or you can actually just stay up on your hands if going down onto your forearms is too much. If that last stretch causes you any discomfort, this is another way that you can do it. So you're going to lay on your back, place the side that you want to stretch, that ankle, on your opposite knee, and then with your hands, you're going to reach in between your legs, grabbing on your hamstring, pulling that leg in towards you. When you are doing this stretch, you want to feel the stretch in your glute, not in your hip. And just like the other stretch, you can hold this stretch for 30 seconds to a minute on each side. This next stretch is a great stretch to do if you don't have time to leave your desk. To start the stretch, all you need is a chair, and you're going to take the ankle on the side that you want to stretch and place it on your opposite knee. Then you're going to take your hands and place them on your hips and pull your shoulder blades down and back. Then all you need to do is slightly lean forward until you start to feel a stretch in your glute muscle. You can hold this stretch for about 30 seconds to a minute on each side. Okay, this next stretch is for your hamstrings, and it is important to stretch this muscle because sometimes it can contribute to lower back pain. So for this stretch, you need something that is slightly elevated off the ground, about a foot, and you're going to place the side that you're stretching, that heel, on your elevated surface. Two tips that you want to make sure you're doing when you're doing this stretch is, number one, your toes on your back leg facing forward, and also making sure that you're keeping your natural curve in your lumbar spine. So hands go on your hips, and then you're slightly leaning forward until you feel a stretch in your hamstring. A great modification for this stretch, if you feel like elevating your heel is too much, or if you have issues with balance, is to just do the stretch on the ground. Heel goes out in front, same thing, back toes facing forward, keeping the natural curve in your lumbar spine. Hands go on your hips, leaning forward until you feel that stretch. And you can hold this stretch for about 30 seconds to a minute on each side.
Okay, so we're gonna go into some of the strengthening stuff right now. One of the things that we wanna make sure stays nice and strong is your core, which is the muscles between rib cage and pelvis. In order to do this, so there's some things that we should talk about first. So think of your rib cage and your pelvis as two things that you wanna keep parallel. So right now, Haley has this nice low back curve. You wanna maintain that as you do this exercise. So she doesn't wanna let it drop or curl really high out of it. So come back into that neutral position, kind of think of your sit bones pointed directly behind you, and then rib cage and pelvis are parallel. From here, she's gonna start with her arms. Your arms are gonna be the easiest way to progress this first. So she's gonna take and reach her right arm forward, and her goal is to not move her back. So she can imagine having like a cup of water here and here, and she doesn't wanna move it, and then she can come down. She can repeat on the other side. And then to challenge a little bit more, now she's gonna take her right leg and she's gonna reach it backwards. If she reaches too far or if she lifts her leg too high, you can see how her back, her hips rotate and her back bends. So she's only gonna go as far as she can without increasing the curve here. And then she can do one with her other side. And then if that feels okay, then she's gonna challenge herself even further by taking left arm and right leg and reaching them out at the same time. Hold this position for a second. One of the things that you can do to help yourself here is pull your right hand towards your left knee, and that will help you find a little bit more support through your center, and then come on in. So I usually recommend doing like 5 with each arm, 5 with each leg, and then 5 side to side. Remember that the diagonals are gonna be harder, so progress slowly to those. You don't have to do those right away. Okay, so we talked about how to strengthen the front side of your body, so now we're gonna go and we're gonna get a little bit more backline strengthening. So again, one of the things you wanna remember is that we wanna maintain the curve in the low back. We don't wanna increase or decrease it, and then you can also use the cue of rib cage and pelvis parallel. So if Haley pushes her back into the floor, you can see how her pelvis tips, and if she arches really far away, you can see how she's still not parallel. So you kinda wanna settle in the middle of that. If you're having a hard time finding that position, take a hand towel, roll it lengthwise, and place it in the small of your back, and then you can tell if you're pushing into it or arching really far off of it. From here, she's gonna think of keeping equal weight through both feet, and then I'm gonna have her press up to lift her pelvis off of the floor, but she's gonna think of still keeping this position. So if she lifts too high, what's gonna happen is she's gonna arch her back, and now we've lost the control through center. We wanna strengthen the glutes with this exercise, but we also don't want to forget about keeping the core engaged, because that's what's gonna help protect your low back and keep the pain away if you are suffering from low back pain. So you can do a couple of things here. She can lift as high as she can without changing this position, and she can hold here like 5 to 10 seconds to start with, or she can lower and lift, and you can just perform repetitions like that. So if you're gonna do repetitions, you can rest. If you're gonna perform repetitions, I would start with sets of 10 and work up to 3 or 4 sets of 10. If you're gonna hold for about 5 to 10 seconds, and maybe start with just 1 to 2 sets of 10 of those, and then you can progress those as you get stronger. Okay, so we're gonna strengthen some of the back muscles, and the reason why this is so important is because our lifestyle kind of makes us fall into a C position, which is this, right? So she's exaggerating this, but everything we do is forward. So the exercises we're gonna focus on are what's gonna help keep us upright and open through the front. In order to keep this position, we have to have strength through our upper back especially. So the next few exercises are gonna go over ways that you can easily do some of that at home. Okay, so we're gonna shift our focus more towards the upper back now. So you can perform these exercises at home with a band, and a really good way if you don't have something up high, you can hook it in a door, or you can use light handheld weights as well. So to start, Haley's gonna check in again with her center and make sure that rib cage and pelvis are parallel. Her hips are right over her knees, and she's supporting herself through the shin, or through her shins in the back as well. From here, she's gonna pull down on the band, bending her elbows, coming wide out to the side. What you're watching for is that you're not pulling up here, so she shrugs. She's not pulling her shoulders up towards her ears and then bringing her elbows down. She's thinking of her shoulder blades kind of sliding straight down towards her back pockets and then pulling down. She's gonna slowly bring her hands back to the starting position and then slowly pull down again. So you're going slow on the way down and slow on the way up. And as she's doing that, you'll notice even on the way up, she's not allowing shoulders to ride up towards ears. Start again with this exercise. You can start sets of 10. I recommend probably 2 to 3 sets to start, but you can progress. If the band becomes too easy, you can choke up on the band or get heavier weights to challenge yourself. Okay, so continuing with the back strengthening, we've switched her position to standing. So just a side note, in the last exercise, if it's uncomfortable to be on your knees, you can do that exercise sitting. You might have to adjust where your band is. And you can also do that last one standing as well, depending on the height of where you're hooking your band. Or if you're using the weights, you can do all of these standing or sitting. So for this next one, Haley's gonna do a row. So she's gonna do the same check-ins. She's equally weighted through both feet. Her hips are right over her ankles. Her rib cage and her pelvis are parallel. So if she tips forward, which this is where a lot of us come, you'll notice that now her rib cage is popping out. Or if she tucks under, sometimes we do too much to overcorrect that anterior tilt. So she's gonna kind of settle. So think of just keeping the natural curve in your low back. And then from here, she's gonna keep elbows close and she's gonna pull the bands straight back behind her. So again, her shoulders are staying down. Her shoulder blades are kind of still sliding down towards the back pockets of her pants. And then she's still slowly returning to starting position and slowly pulling back. If you come here and then quickly let your arms go forward, you can see how she kind of jerks forward, and we don't keep the integrity of the muscles in the back where you're doing that. So again, to modify this, you can sit. You can kneel with this too if you want to challenge your balance a little bit. Start with 2 to 3 sets of 10 and then increase reps from there, increase sets from there, and then you can also increase the strength of the band. Or if it gets too easy, she can just take a step back and then she can progress from there.
For this next mobility exercise, you're going to need a foam roller. You need a foam roller that is at least 36 inches long, or if you have a short foam roller for this exercise, you can place a pillow underneath of your pelvis. So this mobility exercise is focusing on stretching through your front chest muscles, which are your pec muscles. These muscles tend to shorten after you've been working on your desk all day in this forward flex position. So to start this exercise, you're going to lay with your full spine on the foam roller. So you want to make sure that your neck is supported on the foam roller and your pelvis is on the foam roller as well, or supported by a pillow. You're going to make sure your knees are bent and that you have space in between your lower back and the foam roller. So to start the stretch, Ashley's going to bring her arms up like this in this snow angel position, and she's going to start to move her arms down until she finds a position where she starts to feel a stretch in this front part of the shoulders. Once she finds that position, she's going to hold that position for about 30 seconds to a minute, and then she can move down through that snow angel motion again, finding another spot and staying in that spot and holding it as well for 30 seconds to a minute. This next mobility exercise is targeting your glute muscle, which this muscle is important to mobilize because it can often contribute to lower back pain. So to start this exercise, you're going to start with the side that you're stretching on the foam roller, using your opposite leg to wrap around with your foot on the ground for support. And you can do this exercise with your hand on the ground, or you can come down to your forearm to increase pressure. So what Ashley's going to do is she's going to find a spot on the glute that she wants to target by rolling on the foam roller up and down, or rolling forward or back. Once she finds that spot, she's going to pin the muscle down with the foam roller, staying in that spot, and then she's going to take her leg that is extended and bend it back. The goal for this exercise is to pin the muscle down and stretch through it, and you don't want to roll on the foam roller over the muscle. And then for this exercise, you want to do about 10 to 15 reps on each spot on the glute that you want to target.
So in all of these videos that you just saw us do, you probably noticed that we were only doing one side. That was for video purposes, so you didn't have to watch us do both sides, but remember that it's important, even if you don't have pain on the opposite side, to always do both sides to balance everything out.